talk about for this series, but let's go to the map for game 2 because it is an interesting one. We talked about the Braxis holdout ban, but we didn't get to talk about the Warhead Junction ban. Gale Force eSports sort of in the same situation as Tempo in that they've been banning Dragonshire for a very long time, and they felt like they needed to ban Warhead, even though traditionally Gale Force is a good team with globals on large battlegrounds. They still wanted to take away Tempo's comfort pick of Warhead, which leaves open Dragonshire for Tempo to pick, and they'll take it.
I think I respect the idea coming out behind this, right? And because we do know that Gale Force bans Dragonshire so much, we don't get to see too much of them onto the map as a whole. But I will say that Gale Force, in my brain, and according to how the maps function, Gale Force should be really good at Dragonshire. Like, Braxis holdout actually functions a lot like Dragonshire, but the only difference is there's one other lane where they're spawning creeps, but there's two to prioritize. They don't directly lead into the objective, which is slightly above, which can lead to backdooring, and if you have 5-second ahead knowledge above your opponent, you almost always are going to be the first to get the upper hand. Gale Force has the tools to be an amazing Dragonshire team, so I'm not necessarily convinced that we won't see just like a light switch just kind of come on and be like, oh man, Gale Force on Dragonshire. It's going to be unstoppable. They're not there yet. At least they haven't displayed it yet.
We'll have to see. Tempo Storm, hoping that that is not the case, that this is a place where they can get a guaranteed win over Gale Force and tie us up in the series, because no team wants to try to make a reverse comeback.
I will also say, on the same note, when looking at Tempo Storm, though they have been willing to pick Dragonshire more frequently, it is risen in priority for them since the beginning of HGC North America. But it also is a map where you struggle to identify win conditions, and there's really maybe only 2 to 3 that stand out, Curse, Tomb, and Dragonshire. We saw what can happen when they fail to abuse those properly on a map like Cursed Hollow. We talked about the 3 different curses and the boss. All of them failed, and it was the reason they ended up losing the game. Dragonshire, maybe even more difficult to understand how to get those win conditions. So suddenly I'm like, why does Tempo pick maps where it's hard to figure out the win condition, which is blatantly, continuously a weakness of the roster?
I'm sorry, are we casting Gale Force eSports versus Tempo Storm or Gale Force eSports versus Roll20? Because Medivh and Greymane double pick for Tempo Storm. Hello? What's going on here? We'll see. And Dahaka picked too. I mean, Dahaka was sort of a given as a solo laner, as a global for Gale Force, but another Roll20 favorite. And pretty much to every team favorite, though. Let's be real. So
already with that, you expect, Dahaka, that's emphasis into the solo, and you see the 4-man prioritize with the Medivh locked in on side of Tempo.
Do we see more Chromie on Dragonshire? That's my major question.
I would assume if we saw Chromie, it would have been in that 2-3 right there, just because you want to pick it before the secondary ban, and with the Medivh prioritize, emphasis into the 4 and being successful in the 4, Chromie direct counter, or more soft counter to a high priority into that 4-man. So for me, immediately it says no, but there's also a double global, which leads to a 2-1-2, which is not what Chromie is very, very good at. So suddenly, I actually feel like Tempo Storm is the one who has to be pretty responsive to this and how this can be played out, because Gale Force has about 5 different ways to play the laning phase, and none of them really accent a 4-1 the way that Tempo is played into with that Medivh lock-in.
Tempo Storm are going to ban Anu Barak as the warrior. King Caffeine had a pretty darn good Anu Barak last game. And Gale Force still focusing into the solo lane. Do not want to have the Dahaka Malthael matchup. Dahaka is a difficult one to deal with Malthael, or I should say Malthael is difficult for Dahaka, man. His reduction potentially on the self-healing, although we didn't see that talent last game. His ability to be able to bring down the health bar of Dahaka because of his trait, his Reaper's Mark. Just a lot of aggression, and Dahaka has to play back, and he does not want to be doing that. He wants to be dominating this lane.
It is a interesting idea, though, for the Malthael specifically to ban out, because we see the Falstad picked in already, and Falstad leads to 1 of 2. It's either a 2-1-2 or a hyper-focus of priority of kills on the top with the flight. So what do you want traditionally into that is a weak, squishy a target to be able to get that kill into with lack of mobility, or at least a lack of easy immediate escape. And Malthael kind of meets all those parameters except success into the matchup of the Dahaka. So it's like, you either put higher priority into the kill by letting the Malthael through and getting the Falstad ganks on top, or you ban it out, get a bit more advantageous 1v1, and then Falstad puts higher priority into the 4-man. Because you essentially can get free kills up into the top as long as you know that's a squishy and not a warrior to match into the Dahak.
Well, I think that the idea here was that if the thought was Falstad will be flying up a lot for ganks, potentially from mid, the Medivh's not going to really allow you to do that as long as Medivh's playing to his best anyway, because he should be hovering somewhere around mid likely so that he can come up, you can run down if you are the one who's getting ganked, and then you have Force of Will and Portal to bail them out of there. So in this instance, if it's going to be a traditional 1v1 and the fighting is happening a lot more focusing around Medivh and portaling between mid and bot, then it makes sure that Dahaka doesn't have that issue with Malthael. But Garrosh and Malfurion follow up. We're getting a Garrosh, the first Garrosh from Tempo Storm that we'll have seen.
Seems a bit Roll20-us still, you know, as things go down the line here. Not as high priority, but it is, I mean, very interesting and cool to see this coming out from Tempo Storm. Just that is a very different direction for them to move with the draft. They didn't end up picking Garrosh at all. Granted, again, Roll20 was picking it every single time whenever they were able to do so in their series in week 1. So who's going to be able to use it and when? And then the Chromie still being picked up from Gale Force eSports.
A lot of mobility and a lot of options for Gale Force in the lanes.
Yeah.
In the way that they have their heroes right now. But Tempo Storm, they don't have someone traditionally to be up in the top lane. So we're still waiting to see what their plan is to do there. If they wanted to do something a little bit different with like another ranged, traditionally that would be Falstad. That's gone. Psalm is probably the Medivh player. He was before. So that's probably Cattle who will be up in the top. Maybe Arthas?
Arthas seems to stand out the most, considering they have a Greymane and Medivh on their team. It synergizes decent.
Leo.
I didn't think it would be the Leo. Leo is, first of all, popping up a lot more in Korea. Second of all, very surprising in terms of, like, to pick up here. It does better into the laning, better into the wave clear overall, but it does struggle in about every other aspect, right? Other than the direct laning contribution, I am surprised to see that Leo kind of be locked in here. So I want to see a bit, I want to see why here, justified throughout the play in the laning of Tempo Storm. I hope that to see them be very dominant because it's apparent that they are going with some really big adjustments in this draft. I can't tell if I'm really excited to see this or I'm really afraid for on the side of Tempo Storm. I can't tell. It's just like this could be an amazing, you know, new leaf, them innovating, brand new style. Holy cow, how do we end up stopping them? Or maybe this is them kind of going, accepting their place as like we're no longer the best. Who are teams that are better than us? What do they do that make them better than us? And we see that Roll20-ish play style come out. And then can they play it as well? Usually the answer to that is no. And it looks pretty poor. So I'm really hoping that they, you know, it looks like absolutely outstanding for them.
Yeah, and whereas Tempo Storm is playing a lot of different things, a lot of adjustments, maybe the Greymane and Malfurion really being the only things that we would traditionally see from them. And it's cool to see them make change-ups. Gale Force is doing what Gale Force does. It may not be on a battleground they traditionally do that on, but they have a double global setup. They've got their Chromie, they've got Rhaegar to run around, and they've even got King Caffeine's Muradin. This is the most Gale Force esports draft I think I could ever say would be a Gale Force esports draft.
It has a little bit of everything in terms of the play style and strength that the team likes to flaunt overall. I adore the laning opportunities. I feel like there's almost any circumstance of 2 to 3 heroes could justify a lane on a map like Dragonshire for them and still be a winning laning situation. But I do feel like if they struggle and a Garrosh gets a pick, that they don't have a lot of natural dominance within their laning and situation, that they rely on those synergies, right? And so if they lose one, that they could be set behind for maybe a bit too long and suddenly Tempo Storm pull ahead. So if Tempo gets those picks, it could really kind of fall apart quickly for the members of Gale Force, even though they kind of have a brilliant, like, philosophy on how to approach Dragonshire.
Well, game number 1 was wild and crazy. Let's get into game number 2 on Dragonshire and see if it is equally as wild. Gale Force with a 1-game lead so far in the series. Muradin is, we've seen a lot of iterations on warriors that can deal with the Garrosh because somebody is going to get pulled in as long as you have a capable Garrosh player. And in that instance, you want it to be generally your warrior. And even when Tempo Storm played versus Roll20, they didn't ban Garrosh, but they were finding a lot of different ways of trying to deal with him. We saw them come out with Last Rites in Game 3, and they were iterating on different warriors for Fury that could stand the pressure after the throw. They had Johanna, they used Varian with Shield Wall, and we've seen Anubarak and Murden because they have those escape abilities. So we'll see how King Caffeine can do, because already in the last series, King Caffeine sort of seemed to be a focus, a target for Tempo Storm.
He didn't, on the side of the Leoric for Tempo, ended up going with the block for the laning matchup a bit more, but less into the teamfight phase overall. I'm going to be really interested in what build he goes with. Like, I don't even have a general idea of what we're going to see from them. I find it interesting the fact that Moonburn was picked up for June at level 1. On the Malfurion, on a map like Dragonshire. Not so much that I feel like it's pretty apparent the justification as to why we would see it, but we saw Moonburn after the rework essentially go from a coin toss level of play to 0, right? And it seems to be coming back a little bit more now, or at least June is flaunting it on that Malfurion on maps where the wave clear matters. I
do wonder if this game will have Strangling Vines because he's against a Rhaegar. Maybe can reduce Akaface's Ancestral Healing. That would be the ideal heal to reduce by 30% if he can get them caught in the Entangling Roots. And that's the idea, right? You've got the pull, you've got Wrecking Ball to toss someone back, and then follow-up Roots. If they can put enough pressure on them and then force out an Ancestral Healing that Gale Force already didn't want to use at that time because it's just a combo of basic abilities, forcing out a Heroic, but then limiting some of that healing capacity, that would be a gigantic win for Tempo Storm in fights.
I think there's a pretty cool argument as the lingering hindering, Moonfire 2 at level 7 and going in for more of the slow with Garrosh, enabling more opportunities to be able to get the flip. The dragon flip synergy, just get the poke, because suddenly your Loon's Grace can just get one slow, and then Fury easily can find himself into a position to have an amazing toss. And also we have to consider the fact that I don't believe saw many cases of Malfurion and Garrosh together in a team, but what that does in terms of, when he falls very low, having that hot and helping his HP over the long run, but then keeping his armor so very, very high, this is going to be a really nice tool for Tempo Storm to essentially just bait him at low HP continuously. But without going with the CDR at level 4, it's also going to be less likely to be effective that low, and now maybe actually be a drawback more than a bonus.
Yeah, he felt like he needed Indomitable, and granted there are a couple of things that he can make sure that he can dodge with that being Drag as well as Stormbolt for Murden. Even slows, to be able to use it and get the 1.5 seconds of Unstoppable. If he gets out of position, maybe even dodge a Mighty Gust. You don't know. There's a lot of different ways that he can make sure that he doesn't get kited out of position and then taken out. Especially with probably Giant Killer from Falstad. That remains to be seen at level 13.
Nice invade attempt, at least coming out from Psalm. He ends up getting himself a kill, even goes back to lays a bit more on top of K1 Pro, taking a majority of the damage. Won't go back for a third time, but that was a very successful mission for a solo Medivh. He stalled out enough to go back and get himself a Dragon Knight. Tempo Storm. That was just brilliant play.
Psalm's playing out of his mind this series. His Genji play was excellent in the last game. Now showing us rich level plays on his Medivh. He's starting to siege down the towers in the mid. Fury and Cawthon have found a charge, but it is King Caffeine who gets booted away. I hate that feeling, man. That happened to me the other day, too. Just, like, get thrown around for a long time. I got into the frayed. That was you who did that to me. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Sounds legit. Cattle's Wraithwalk won't make it out too far. Good dodge into the Stormbolt immediately, though. That's actually might be the thing that sets him alive up towards that top half of the map. We don't see the lingering apparition for him at 7, instead focusing into that skeletal swing. So less split push pressure, but still the Royal Focus being picked up for Cattle.
He does have Paralyzing Rage, so that will give an additional slow, which may function in the same way you were saying with hindering Moonfire. Unfortunately for our Moonfire thrower, June has been taken out and is the first kill of this game for Gale Force eSports. Fury turns back around, makes sure that they can bring down Rhaegar. It's a 1-for-1 trade. Cawthon luck!
Gets
dodges
lucky.
Everything.
Makes it out of that one. Gale Force eSports there. That was, losing the Dragon Knight, a bit inconvenient. Hold up. Into the mid lane. Cattle does end up going down. Oh my gosh, no way. Saul! On that Medivh! Where has this been? That was just beautiful rotation for him to make sure he gets that pickup, saving the members of Tempo Storm. And things are just looking good. Tempo, it's very surprising. They have been ahead in both of these games, but not through the major flashy plays we see teams getting ahead. And most of the times it feels like it's Gale Force trying something, not necessarily getting what they want, and then Tempo getting that counter, which is really awesome to see from them.
Good stun. Stops initially from taking out Fan. Fan is caught between so many members, drops the slowing sand, still making it out, running away. Cottonlet goes in, gets stunned before he can cocktail. Fan turns around with the sand, obliterates him, drops the B-step, walks away.
Very good job. Gale Force, the catching themselves, the Gray Mane though, allows them to go back and pick up the Giants in this window, but without the 10 for a long while. We have Dragon Knight coming up, and I'm guessing it's probably 10 seconds here. It's going to pop up. And with that, that means that they're going to be down that 10 spike as the Dragon Knight is up. So can they stall out long enough with the Giants? I think that they might be able to do it. It's very convenient for Gale Force eSports. That allows them to at least hold their own and commit 5 members to a specific lane and be able to stall out. Or maybe we'll see them, you know, not willing to spread out and take that risk.
They've got everybody but the Globals who can wait patiently in their respective lanes, try to slow things down. But there's 4 members here. There's the toss. King Caffeine's fine, but there's no way that Gale Force can step into this bottom shrine. They have Falstad keeping guard over mid, and he's even pushed that mid wave pretty far. But Tempo Storm don't seem to be really making too much of a rotation out of this bottom lane, except for with Medivh, who is the ideal target, it looks like, for them to be able to put into the Dragon Knight.
Really good route there coming out from June.
There's the bullet.
Forces the Ancestral Healing. Spike coming out there from Akaface. Drag not going to connect for Fury.
The Shrine's been captured by Gale Force eSports now. They've made it to their heroic abilities, and with the Globals, oh no. Caterpillar and Som. K1 Pro's just fine.
Fury looking to zone off, unable to connect with that flip attempt there. Stormbolt doesn't land either from Calf.
There's the throw, but it doesn't quite hit. Now Dahaka comes into huge 3-man taunt, but even still a drag confirms the fate of Garrosh as he goes down for 23 more seconds. Gale Force eSports with a power play for 20 seconds, hoping that they can get their first Dragon Knight.
They're gonna have to make a lot happen onto the map here. Their wave clear doesn't seem too outstanding enough to be able to, you know, immediately get that pick, pressure out the map, and then have the advantage over their opponents. And so that is why their laning setup, you know, they had a lot of different directions to go with it, but after that play coming out from Psalm on the night camp, falling behind like that, I feel like Gale Force is now trying to second guess what is the laning situation that they want themselves to have. For now, it's a 2v1 into Cattle, and that is not a winning trade for them, considering, you know, Salt or a Cattle on the Liorki should be something that only the Dahaka has to deal with on its own, but again, it's too global, so you could make the argument, well, both can leave. It's just, do you really want to drop that resource and articulate that rotation that easily to the members of Tempo Storm?
There's about to be a bruiser camp along with the double global, although Dahaka was questioning going back, and he is going to go back, get healed up. Not being able to make anything happen in the top lane, Tempo Storm sets focus back to the bottom. Once again, they'll go in after King Caffeine, but he has that escape and has been using it. There's only the roots as a follow-up, and that is why we saw Roll20, their optimal support with the Garrosh being the Uther, because he could have that point-and-click stun after the fact. It can be hard to try to make sure that you're catching the person, but they'll do it the old-fashioned way with a 3-man leyline seal.
They're going to go ahead and drop the Twilight Dream afterwards. Ancestral goes off, though. Akaface is in a bad spot using that Spirit Wolf. Gus is not going to be able to buy him any time as the Force of Will keeps Cawthon and the rest of the members of Tempo Storm just fine. Another beautiful Force of Will. Entomb go ahead and drop on top to Fan as he's throwing out the spells.
Timeout.
He times out.
He has it for a long time. He's still staying alive, but Tempo Storm don't want to get off of this Chromie. Cawthon's going to go back in, but doesn't quite take down Fan. This is almost a repeat of before, but Cawthon was healthier. Fury with the 41 armor. Tankier than it might seem at first glance.
It's just the Medivh, man. Between Portals and Force of Will, it's just, where do you get a kill? It's so very, I mean, the kiting out from Tempo Storm and using the Portals was very, very well done. And Psalm, again, with amazing shielding at all points in time, but Gale Force eSports there, that fight, they actually played it pretty well. Fan especially dodging a lot of Moonfires that would have gotten the last kill on top of him, throwing out the spells appropriately, but when when the team plays with Medivh as well as we just saw that last team fight, there's almost no case where you're going to find yourself pulling out ahead.
This is one spot where Gale Force can, as I say that, Psalm shows up out of nowhere again, and it's just a constant that Psalm is likely rotating the place that he needs to be for a team to make sure that Gale Force doesn't get a kill, doesn't get extra time where they have 4 to the 5 members, or 5 to the 4.
Watch the next fight and watch it kind of when the shielding comes out and when the kill potential on the side of Gale Force eSports, because we also have to remember that Falset is the only consistent-ish damage. Speaking of Falset, he popped the Gush just to keep alive Mike Udall, who, by the way, didn't get himself the Ancestral, and Tomb is going to go on to Akaface. No healing for a couple more seconds, and that is going to be a bad thing for K1 Pro as he barrel rolls away.
Leyland Seal came out seeing if he could catch Fan or at least stop the rotations in for the rest of Gale Force eSports, but the damage was done. Michael Udall went down. It's a few more seconds without Dahaka, but with both of the shrines being controlled, that's kind of the problem versus that double global. Tempo Storm were forced to come to the mid to fight. Ancestral keeps Fan alive. The rest of the team coming in.
Cawthon able to dodge that Storm Bolt. Psalm removes himself from Ravenforn and decides to drop in, see what's up for a moment there. With the top shrine controlled by Tempo Storm, bottom still for Gale Force. It's just flinging King Caffeine around, and this oftentimes feels a lot like what we saw with the other Garrosh games that we saw out of North America, where it's just wait until we get the appropriate initiation and then get that beautiful team fight all in with the Medivh, with the Garrosh together. And so far, Gale Force is trying to find a way to be able to deal with it. They're going to start with this Entomb on bottom. Timeout's going to be dropped. No Ancestral Healing, keep in mind, so that is going to be a dead Chromie immediately after.
Falset's flying in, has the Twilight Dream. It is going to go down, and he Mighty Gusts the rest of the team away as that Twilight Dream went down. So Fan has still stayed alive. Now Michael Udall comes in. He's got the top shrine, so all they have to do is make sure they can get out. And they know that someone from Tempo has to walk all the way up to the top, make that long trek, and that gives Gale Force time to get 16, and maybe even to take that bottom shrine away. They're stalling with their globals very well.
Yeah, they are stalling with their globals effectively. It's just, I'm trying to figure out, are we past the point where Tempo Storm, with the composition that they have and doing what they've been able to do throughout this game, unless a major team fight happens, we have to remember that they have dictated the control over these first couple of Dragon Knights pretty effectively, and we still see 0 forts down, Gilly. That is not what you should be expecting, especially with the Dragon Knight buffs that have come online into, you know, I believe it was the last patch that we saw. So even if this continues, which it seems to be the case, Gale Force is going to keep playing cat and mouse around the members of Tempo Storm. Does Tempo get enough off of the objective if they, you know, now that 16 has come online? Because I feel like Gale Force, as long as they get their Murd in, they regroup, they join a team fight, they could get that wipe. And when that happens, suddenly Tempo Storm's the one playing reactive.
It's all about whether or not Gale Force starts to lose more staggered deaths. Tempo's attempting to make that happen with with K1 Pro, but the Entomb sort of separated him away, and he used the Mighty Gust, so he stays alive. Now Muradin's going to be back up in a few seconds, and because of this double global, Tempo can't just bank on getting one kill and then being able to get the Dragon Knight. And they know that they have to take the fight to somewhere, take it to the globals, take it where they're going to have some sort of advantage over Gale Force. Maybe that is to be able to get some mercenary camps and buy the time in the lanes to give them more time, but still, because of the double global, and by the way, that only gets way more disastrous for Tempo Storm once Gale Force hits 20 and has Epic Mount and Apex Predator. Even one of those will be a thorn in the side of Tempo Storm. They're just going to have to, I guess, stop relying on Dragon Knights and just hope and rely more on their ability to initiate team fights with Garrosh, with Malfurion, and with Medivh.
I agree with you. But I do have a concern in that avenue as well, because on a map like Dragonshire, this late into it, we're almost rounding. Like, we're talking 20 talent tiers and a 4 hasn't gone down. That is a pretty bold statement to, you know, claim about a game unless you know, experience one moving as slow as this one is before us. And a lot to bring onto that is Dragonshire is a map that does promote in the later stages, a free fort to fall at the later moments of the game. Much like on Curse, like you'll see two of the lanes get pressured and eventually the one just like, hey, would you like to take me for free? It just kind of falls on top of your lap. We've had a few avenues for mainly Tempo because they've been in such control on the bottom half of the map and the top half. Yes, they have whittled away at the HP, but by no means have they committed to those. So I am concerned, again, for that same reasoning, for them to be able to commit to that, because it is an opportunity. They've had the opportunities and they're not confirming any of them. Could argue that, you know, they're wasting efforts elsewhere, putting more concentration into dominating the Dragonite, but somebody's got to lock down these structures, and because visually it will provide so much more for them over Gale Force, and they're going to not be like, hey, we have double globals. They're going to be like, thank goodness we have double global, because otherwise this game is over.
They're getting closer to 20, but Gale Force is not far behind them. There's Avatar and Ancestral Healing.
Oh,
Michael
June.
Udall comes in, catches June, even with the ley line seal, stopping the back line. One still goes down. K1 Pro is flying in. Drag catches. Fury gets the protect from the Force of Will and a portal too. Michael Udall's there, but gets thrown back with the Wrecking Ball of Fury. So only the one kill, but it was an important one. It caught Gale Force eSports up in experience, and it was the support for Tempo.
40 seconds without the Malfurion, and I hate to say it, Gilly, but this looks like the first fort of this game is going to fall to Gale Force eSports on bottom. What just happened? That is the first fort.
16 minutes, 30 seconds into our Dragonshire game, almost level 20.
Should be a Dragonite for Gale Force eSports with that double global. Falstad or Dahaka. Dahaka is the member transitioning towards top. Then send everybody else towards the middle lane. At least focus onto the 20 spike. So now we hit the situation where Tempo Storm. Not only...
There's a lot of members of Tempo to delay. They might be able to delay. They don't have their Malfurion.
They can delay, but they have to match Gale Force with the 20. Wow, there's no barrel roll, by the way. Keep in mind, that taunt is going to be 100%, but the W!
Lightning!
They get the kill. It gets rebutted. Tempo Storm just seems to be falling apart.
Oh, that is devastating. Dragonite not claimed yet. Caterpillar was slowing down Michael Udall, but now K1 Pro, after getting that kill on Cothamuk, will turn right around and with a fly and a barrel roll, take out Leoric, the staggered death start. That was a Leoric. He can come back faster. Right around the same time, really, as Greymane. But damage from the 2 kills is enough, maybe?
He gets pre-cleansed. Timeout, Ancestral. He's alive.
Somebody get this Dragonite.
And there goes Mikey Doll. He's going to scuttle his way right on through. Thanks for the DK. First Dragonite of the game for Gale Force eSports, 17 minutes in. And now they're going to stomp their way down to this fort up on bottom. There's going to be a flip, a taunt, a root, everything popped onto King Caffeine.
Avatar.
Even going to drop himself an Avatar.
Worth it though, stays alive. Portal there, Entomb catches Fan. They know this might be somebody to catch now, but the time trap stops Caterpillar for so long that nobody else really could follow in with Fan 2. They're trying to make sure that they can take out this Dragonite.
That Dragonite change actually almost got Cattle in a very bad position there for a moment, but he stayed on the right side of the battlefield for now. Bottom fort, or keep front wall, is going to be the first to fall. It looks like it's some of the members. No, Calf is just instead anchoring. I thought they might transition towards mid. Force of Will used on the Cattle as he's draining the Hope. This bottom keep
is healthy.
It needs to die. If Tempo Storm, or excuse me, if Gale Force eSports is going to be able to turn this game back around. They do have the double global post 20, and they have the fort in structural advantage, but they want at least this keep sitting below 50% HP.
It's weird. You've got Fury with Garrosh, and you have a possibility of a leyline seal. Gale Force can't find an opening. Now the portal's been dropped. They catch King Caffeine, who gets a lot of damage right away from that. Gus throws back a lot of the members of Tempo Storm, but not before they take out Muradin. The rest on full retreat. Now Caterpillar using his Wraithwalk movement speed, seeing if he can catch Michael Udall with an Entomb. Doesn't have Entomb, so he would have had to catch all the way back up, get the slow from Paralyzing Rage. But Mike gets out, has the Brush Talker movement speed bonus to run away from that. So the retreat only at the cost of Muradin, but the keep was not brought down.
Okay, so where do we find ourselves now?
Epic Mount, but no Apex Predator.
So that means that now K1 Pro has to be the individual being the what do we call him? We'll call him the shrine herder. You know, he's the one who he gathers them all together and he's like, guys, I got the shrines. We're good to go. Let's battle up in the mid lane. That is going to be his responsibility. Is that a good or a bad thing? You could argue it's a bad thing, just purely based on the fact that
he's squishier.
He's squishier, and more importantly, his transitions, due to his passive not being as effective as the level 1 of Rush Dot, or on the Dahaka, means that in theory, outside of using his global, he's just flat slower. So you need to use that global more often, which means you're more predictable. At the end of the day, maybe not the best global choice, but it is the one necessary for Gale Force here to be able to turn this game. The double Giants and Knights are enough to be able to get this keep on bottom, and Dahaka's not moving.
The keep is gone.
What?
Tempo Storm took it. Michael Udo's in the top.
I just want to say, Gale Force eSports giving that up, I can't tell. If they get this Dragon Knight, over the next Dragon Knight, and seem very well calculated in their transitions, I want to say that was one of the most humble accepting your outcome for the better fight in the future I've seen out of all of NA so far, and all of HGC. I just want to know if they actually are thinking about the circumstances they put themselves in beforehand, though. The Dahaka backing out towards top is proper. They transfer to bottom with the heavy focus, but the Garrosh flank, Fury, flips Akaface, maybe not the best target.
Fan's being chased down by Caterpillar.
But he can
buys
time
enough
out.
time as he can with timeout, and that puts Caterpillar in a corner from all the members of Gale Force. They bring him down. Drag catches Garrosh.
Oh,
it's Garrosh though.
It's just Garrosh. I was like, oh man, this might be a bad time.
And that leyline seal catches a lot of members, except Falstad and except Fan.
Okay. But the Dragon Knight goes back to Gale Force. They're still in control with the double global. K1 Pro using that 16.
Cotton's there.
He's dead. He's too far out. He's off on his own. He gets cut.
The Portal Dreams. For about the 90th time, Psalm saves the day for Tempo Storm in this game.
Oh man, and now they're just gonna go ahead and just stomp right on in. Cattle unable to slow. With the double shrine controlled, the one keep up on top, that is not a lane or circumstance that Gale Force has got to be too thankful of. I mean, you normally want it through the bottom half if you're going to get the stall out in this later stages of the game. This is going to be a Dragon Knight. They need to avoid staggered deaths.
Oh, Caterpillar. Psalm's there. Force of Will shows that Psalm's here.
Needs to be very careful. He can die to King Caffeine. Kata goes through.
The rest of Tempo here. Caft's been caught with an Entomb. Cursed Bullet forces Avatar. Still taking a lot of damage. Wasn't able to get his own self-heal. Staggered deaths really starting to come in and hurt Gale Force eSports. They find another. They take out Akaface.
Now that is 2 members of GFE that are dead for an entirety of 50 seconds. We do have that Falstad back online with the Epic Mount, so he's going to be able to do his best to go around and stall out. But at most, it's 1 Dragon Knight delay, and it will be up on top. But look at Fan on that Chromie. He's baiting this. He knows this is going to be the 1 versus 1. He comes through.
With the Psalm.
Can he predict the ley line?
Seal.
They're going to go to...
Somebody's there. Dragon's already gone.
They're going for the core. They got...
Look at the lane. Look how far the lane is pushed. No Muradin and no Akaface. No Akaface for 30 seconds.
We only have a Gus to be able to pull them away from the core. This is probably going to be it. It looks like Tempo Storm has found themselves a game.
Gale Force has to do it again. They did it before with the boss in game number 1. Can they stop the inevitable from Tempo Storm? A 23-minute Dragon Knight starts to barrel down, breaking down the core and the shielding.
90% and counting, as that is 1 big Dragon Knight. Fan is going to go down, but Gale Force ends up losing Dragonshire, and there we are going to be evening up this series 1-1 now after that Tempo win.
A 1-1 tie, but Tempo Storm in both games controlling the early game heavily in this game, having a lot of control and forcing Gale Force to make some risky choices, risky decisions. Makes me wonder how the rest of the series is going to go.
I feel like the answer is going to be probably the exact same way.
Game 5?
I mean, a lot of it will be like, I feel like you can even set the tail right now. Every game we're going to see, most of the time Tempo Storm is going to get a lead. And even in the cases where they don't, it's just going to be a bit more drastic. It's just Do we see Gale Force eSports punish the lack of aggression when the advantage is owned on the side of Tempo Storm? I mean, again, I feel like the lack of forts in the last game is a pretty apparent circumstance. Like, with how big of a lead that they have managed to maintain and how dominant they appeared through the controlling of the lane, but nothing ends up falling, you're just kind of like, how does this happen? And a lot of it is just not understanding where their advantages are and getting as much out of it as they possibly can.
It kind of reminds me a lot of the regionals that we've had the past few from Taiwan. Teams that are really good at making sure that they don't die. They make all the necessary rotations to stay safe. It's just you never see them. It's like there's a line that's drawn on the map, and then you go anywhere further than that line, and the minute somebody goes out of their lane, doesn't show up on the map, all of a sudden you back off because it's just not worth losing somebody. So far, it has been beneficial for Tempo in at least one game. Gale Force did make a miracle comeback in the other. We're going to head to a break. After it, we'll see you for Game 3. Stick with us.